Hi, welcome to the Hipster Camel Podcast, episode 4. This is Old Docs, New Tricks. My name is Jennifer Seagraves, one of your hosts, and I'll be hosting today. Jody's producing, and we're grateful you've joined us. And these podcasts have been highlighting high impact practices in teaching and learning and how those significantly benefit our students, our faculty, our staff, and our campuses and communities in general. And this week I've got two special guests. I've got Holley Long and Hannah Holmes, who both also work here at the Campbell University Wiggins Memorial Library. And I'm going to have them introduce themselves. And then I'm going to do a quick rapid get to know you questions. And I'm going to ask you both a couple of questions. And I just want you to give me your first gut reaction to them. But go ahead and introduce yourselves.
Hi, I'm Holley Long. I'm the Metadata and Digital Initiatives Librarian here at Wiggins Memorial Library.
And I'm Hannah Holmes. I'm the Reference and Instruction Librarian at Wiggins Memorial Library.
So I'm going to ask you a question. I want you to give me your first gut reaction or answer. And you could do it in that order, Holley and then Hannah. So orange or black?
Definitely orange.
I agree, orange.
All right. Favorite place on campus?
Oh gosh, I'd have to say the Student Union.
I'm tempted to say the library. I think I'm a little biased.
Me too. Great. So this one a little deeper here. What or who has been inspiring you this week or weekend? Be a person, a book, a show.
I have a new graduate student who is new to the library profession, and I am just inspired by how she is absorbing all this new information. So I would say it's Anna.
I think for me, honestly, Jen, it's you. This past week, you've helped me to think about what I want to do next, where I want to go, and what I want to apply myself in my job. And so I think that's probably what I've been thinking about recently is the conversations that we've had about how best I can do that.
No, don't make me cry. Oh, hmm. Oh, okay. Next one. Tell me the last archival document you touched or experienced.
Let's see. We're going to talk about a class that I taught recently later in the podcast, but I would say I touched a bunch of documents for that. One of them, it was a set of documents about a typewriter that J.A. Campbell purchased for his students. And I thought that was kind of fun. The typewriter was sort of like AI for its generation for J.A. Campbell. So I would say that's the last one I touched.
How neat.
Holly, I think the last one I touched was, is it the 1570? Is that the year that it was the Bible that we have? And it is our oldest resident in the archive. We did an Instagram post about that to kind of highlight the archive and show students some of the materials that we have that they might not know about. So I think that's the last one that I touched was that Bible.
Great. Well, those are just some warm-up kind of questions. The real purpose of us meeting today and talking is we want to talk about some of the archival work that we have been doing over the past year or so. October is National Archives Month, so we hope that all of our listeners will be engaging with us during that time, and we'll think about an archive that maybe inspired you or maybe inspires you to go and look up an archive. But let's start with our librarians here, asking them, why are archives so important?
Archives are really important because they preserve unique history, culture, and identity. They safeguard our primary sources. So think about photographs, letters, oral histories, institutional records, student publications, things like that. And they tell stories that aren't always going to be captured in textbooks. And they're especially important for research, teaching, and public memory. And they give students and faculty direct access to these materials. It invites critical analysis, it allows for new narratives, and at our university, it's also strengthens the sense of belonging by showing students that their voices and their contributions matter and might someday be a part of the archive. So, our archive houses one of a kind materials that no other institution holds. We keep a lot of Campbell's history specifically and some about the region as well. And so, if students do get to work with our wonderful metadata librarian Holley and get to go into the archival reading room, they will experience working with these primary sources. And so, like I said, archival research also fosters critical thinking skills where students are required to analyze these sources, unlike secondary sources that they might have been pre-digested for those students. And our archive mostly focuses on university history, which helps students to feel more connected to our institution and also see themselves as a part of that continuous narrative, creating that sense of belonging.
Fabulous. I love how you touched on the fact that those are archives are living histories as well, and that in our present place and time that our students can contribute to the archives and be part of that living, breathing thing that is archives. Anything else we want to add in there?
I don't think so. I think Hannah summarized it perfectly. So,
Great.
yeah.
All right. So I mentioned the past year we've been working on a status quo award that incorporated archives and belonging. And I'd love for you to tell us a little about that project and then why the project is an example of a high impact practice. And so for this high impact practice, it was really hard for us to identify which practice in particular that we were touching on because this one blends the line between so many of these. And I think that's really true for a lot of the work that we do in teaching and learning. It's not often just one. It's affecting our students in many areas. So we definitely think that this project we worked on is a great example of service learning and that experiential learning piece, but it also touches on the collaborative assignment and projects, learning community as an archive, as a integrating learning from across multiple courses, programs, and involves students with kind of that big picture beyond the classroom of returning to archives over and over. And then archives also have given our students a wonderful opportunity to be involved in undergraduate research. So that being said, there's not just one specific high impact practice that we can label, but tell us a little bit about why this is an experiential learning experience for our faculty and students.
Sure. Well, first off, to tell you a little bit about the project we did, it was a twofold project. Our primary objective was to increase awareness and usage of Campbell's archive on campus among both faculty and students. And we did this through two initiatives. One was to hold a workshop for faculty to help them understand how they can use archives in their classes. And the second initiative was to host a contest for students, a creative contest whereby they would use archival materials in some kind of creative work. And in addition to that, we wanted to highlight belonging because, as Hannah said, archives can increase a sense of belonging. So those were the two projects that we did. I don't know, Hannah, if you have anything you want to add to that.
I'll just say that if you want to see our student submissions for the creative contest, they are available online. And we had some really great submissions, and it really does highlight the sense of belonging that they found through the archives. And of course, that was the purpose of it. But reading them is very touching and really helps you kind of appreciate your own place within Campbell, too.
Very
Yeah.
true.
And a note on that, I loved how inclusive our participants' submissions were. Like, we had submissions from a variety of campuses, including our incarcerated population over at Sampson. So it's really interesting to see different groups engage.
In the fall of 2023, Campbell put out a call for projects to challenge the status quo. So the status quo being practices that are outdated or are no longer serving campus. And Jennifer and Hannah and I were inspired by a call from the British Library. Was it the British Library?
Yeah, the Museum of Victoria and Albert in London.
Yes. They put out a call for experts in certain pop culture fields like Taylor Swift and Crocs and so forth. And the idea is that they wanted to bring patrons in to the experience of archives and make it a user-driven experience rather than sort of librarian-driven experience. I don't know, Hannah, do you want to add anything to that?
I think they wanted to make it like less static and they wanted to make it more like outreach. I'm trying to think of the best way to say that. I don't know. We said something in our proposal that was good. I can't remember what it was though.
I know.
Yeah.
And I remember the invite was like, oh, hey, we're going to bring all of our collections on tufting or Crocs or Taylor Swift, and we're going to bring everything that we have and put it in a room and bring all of these people who have this profound interest in Crocs, Taylor Swift, tufting, whatever it was, and have them figure out in a creative way how to present this stuff to the world. And it just looked like this really kind of fun way to engage with your materials that a library or a museum may have. And so that inspired us to go forward and create our proposal. And this was around the same time that we were starting to discuss the impact of a sense of belonging on campus and kind of integrating that into our everyday work. So then what did we do after that?
I pulled up our slideshow too, and I have like the thing that we wrote there. So I pulled that up. But the museum looking for superfan advisors, the opportunity reflected something powerful, which was that the museum was inviting real people to interact with the collections, to share their personal insights, and to help shape how those materials would be presented to the public. And I think that's kind of, like you said, the inspiration of how can we do that here at Campbell and how can we make them a place where people actually want to come and interact with the materials that are there.
Great. And we ended up having a workshop where we invited faculty to come from across campus and to engage with our archives. We went on a tour of the archives. We did some workshopping we started with their first memory and meaningful experience in archives. And then we kind of showed them what archives that Campbell had, and then the world in general is a little bit bigger. And then we spent some time working on how they could incorporate or think about incorporating those into the work that they already do. And we've been so pleased because we've had a couple of faculty who've really taken us up on this endeavor since our status quo workshop and since the contest. And I'm excited for you both to tell us a little about those two faculty and how they've engaged. And I just went out to lunch with one of the faculty, and he was telling me about a project that he has been working on this summer and fall. So can you tell us a little bit about how we can get students, faculty, and our stakeholders more involved in using archives and primary research, just in general?
Sure. So one of those faculty who attended the workshop was Glenn Jonas, and he was inspired to include an assignment in his Christian history class. And what he decided to do was take the students down to the Buies Creek graveyard and have them select one of the sort of people who are notable in Campbell history and do a research project and a short paper and presentation on each person. And that has been a lot of fun going through the archives, finding materials on these individuals, and then meeting with students to let them go through the materials and do their research. Then in a second project, Jackie Stankey in the history department is teaching a class on historical methods in writing, and she wanted students to have an experience with primary sources where they could just sort of learn more about primary source research and see what the Campbell Archive has to offer, primarily for them to get a sense of what kind of research they could do for their project, their final project. And I think both were really successful classes. I don't know if you have anything you want to add.
Just those, or at least Holley and I had the opportunity to go out with Dr. Jonas to the cemetery over the summer, and that experience really became this experiential experience for us as well. So we got to go out, talk through the assignment with him, walk around these gravestones. Then Holley and I went into the archives. I know you went in multiple times. I only joined you one time over in the engineering building, but it opened up this door where we got to get our hands into some primary materials and learn a little bit about the lives of some of the people who've come before us on this campus, and that was really fun. And it's been fun to work with both of you in this endeavor.
That's one of the best parts about archives is you never know what you're going to find or what's going to snag your attention. I was speaking to some of my friends from grad school the other day, and she was talking about a description project that she was doing where she was going through and trying to process a collection, and was working on finding aids for them. And she said she spent like a whole week just on one thing that she found, trying to go through and research it and find as much out as she could so that she could put that information into the finding aid. So, I mean, it's fun when you actually get to do something like that and find something that really piques your interest. So yeah, I'm glad that students are able to get that as well.
Yeah, that's a great point, especially in a world where sometimes we expect everything to be so instant. Having the experience of going through archival work teaches you that job or importance of patience, right? Like Holley and I spent hours in there, or at least an hour or two going through some stuff. And I remember I went through a whole folder or so of these letters, and then we were talking about them and finally said, oh, we figured out the woman hadn't even started her journey at Campbell till a couple of years later. So although it was really good, juicy information about her life, it was like, oh, this isn't the direction that I was following. And I think that's good for students to learn, and for us to learn. It's not instant. It's a process. Yeah. So last question for you is, I'd love for you to give us some tips on involving any other faculty who might be interested in incorporating archives into their courses and assignment programs. What steps or what do you suggest for those faculty?
I'll say the best thing that you can do is ask a librarian. We tell students that all the time, and it also holds true for our faculty members as well. Connect with your librarian, talk with them, and see what materials in the archive can support the goals of the class research projects. We can even help design those projects as well around specific archival materials if that's something that you might want to identify. Even the smallest inclusion of archival materials can be beneficial for both the students and the archive too. Newspapers or letters are a great place to start, and connect to a lot of different disciplines as well. It's also important for us in the faculty to emphasize how those archival projects align with broader learning goals like critical thinking, communication, belonging, digital literacy, and more. And that way students get a better understanding of the purpose of archives and of how they can personally connect to them as well. So yeah, I'd say talk to your librarian. That's the best place to start, is talk to your librarian.
And I'll just throw this in. That was Dr. Stankey's recommendation as well, is to get started by talking with a librarian. So it's unanimous.
So, Holley or Hannah, could you tell us a little bit about what is available in the archives or some examples of that?
Sure. The archive is primarily has university history documents, and the students just find this stuff so engaging. And Dr. Stankey emailed us a quote from a student afterward, which I'd like to read if that's okay. So this is a history major. She'll graduate in 2007. And she said, "So many different projects can be done using the pieces of history Campbell University has stored away. With some of the letters, photographs, and other documents, a student could make a complete and detailed timeline of the university history and even discuss how students' conduct has evolved over time by perusing the handbooks we have. Additionally, a student can write about how World War II impacted colleges, either regarding the rationing system imposed on American citizens or the changes in students and their lives on campus. You could even discuss the changes in prices over time using the ledgers Campbell University has too. The Campbell University Archive is a treasure trove for anything to do with Campbell or Bowie's Creek." So I really appreciated that. How about you, Hannah?
Yeah, so I actually got to talk to one of Dr. Sankey's students as well, and she gave me a little insight into what they looked at in class. So I asked her, what all did you guys look at? And she said that they had a student French booklet from 1921, and it was interesting because that student actually died a year later. So they got to kind of get an insight into that. 1917 girls basketball team. I'm not sure if that was the picture or maybe just the log of students. And they also had medical ledgers from J.A. Campbell, and there's an entry from when he took his daughter to the doctor, a 1900s orchestra photo. And this one is one that she found incredibly interesting. And it was a 1943 copy of Mein Kampf in German. And so I asked her a little bit more about like what she found most intriguing about the assignment and what kind of stood out to her. One of the things that she said was it makes her feel more connected to history, which is her favorite subject. But she was also talking about that 1943 book of Mein Kampf, and she said it was interesting to see what Campbell had in the archive. So she said being able to look more in depth at what Campbell had was very interesting. Most interesting was the 1943 Mein Kampf, which was in German, and it's banned in Germany. So something like that, which isn't easily found from where it's from, is exciting and interesting.
Great examples. Thank you both. Is there anything else you want to include or
Yeah,
add
I
in?
think I might like to add one little bit to that last question, which is I'm glad that Madison mentioned the ledger, the medical ledger, because we often think of archives in association with humanities classes, but they're also still relevant for the sciences, particularly when you get into the history of science. And we do have materials from an early 20th century doctor here in Bowie's Creek, Dr. McCoy, and I think it could be an interesting experience for the nursing students or even the medical students to see what the practice of medicine was like in the early 1900s.
It's a great example. I remember during our workshop that we invited faculty to come in and engage with the archives. We had people from all over campus, and I can't remember his name right now, but he somehow tied his interest to the hard sciences as well. Does anyone
Dr.
remember?
Alashi?
Yeah,
Yes. What was his example?
he was
Uh,
searching for the origin of vitamin A or something, wasn't he? Something like that.
yeah, so mind blowing. Yeah, how you can use these in so many different areas and learn from them.
Campbell also has just such a plethora of disciplines and of graduate programs here. So looking back at like, what was the pharmacy program like at its beginning? Like who was a part of it? How big was the program? All kinds of stuff like that is questions that you can bring into the archive and potentially have answered with physical items that are from the time period.
Yeah, so much more than just history. I think of like marketing and business as well, and how we can really pull out some examples there. And even one thing that we keep in there is like one of the old Gaylord costumes. Was
Yeah.
it Gaylord? It was a little more fun, but you really can tie that to a time in history and talk about marketing and advertising through a piece like that. Anything else anyone wants to add, or any last input? Tell us about your work this summer in submitting a paper.
Where we wrote up our project about challenging the status quo, hosting outreach events to increase campus engagement with archival primary sources. We had presented it at a North Carolina Society of American Archivists conference earlier this year. And so this summer we decided to write up that presentation and also give a little bit of insight into our findings, what we thought was interesting about it, kind of future work, and submitted that to be published. So hopefully, this can potentially inspire others to do something similar at their institutions, or maybe even will inspire some of our faculty to reach out to us, and we can work with them to get archives into their classroom and help out their students into some of that critical thinking and different ways to apply the theory that they're learning in class into kind of real world situations or previous world situations looking into the past.